All right, we are officially live. I want to welcome everyone who is going to be joining us to this live program. And let me find there we go. There you are. I am Betsy Pilon, and I serve Hope Chai as the president on the board of directors. And tonight we are here with Sara Morgan, who is on our medical advisory board. She's a pediatric physical therapist. She also happens to be my sister-in-law because it's a small world, and we're so happy to have her serve on our medical advisory board. So she has personal connections to HIE through our family. She, treats a myriad of kids in clinic. And so Sara, if you want to I want to welcome you to this event, and thank you for joining us and participating in this. And if you want to, introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your background and clinical expertise and all that, it'd be fantastic.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. Like Betsy said, I'm a pediatric physical therapist. I work in outpatient therapy at the University of Michigan, where I have worked since 2011. So I work with kids of all ages, 0 to up to like 23, and of all varying diagnoses. So most of my patient population has some sort of neurological impairment. I do see some orthopedic kids, but the vast majority have some sort of neurologic impairment. One of my areas of interest is in infants and young children with developmental delays. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm here today to talk to you guys a bit about physical therapy and like this new world of teletherapy that we're in, and home exercises, because I'm sure it's become more and more a part of everybody's lives. So that's kind of the gist about me and what I'm here for tonight.
Great. And I know you started your career before U of M too, working with early intervention for a little bit too.
I did, yes. It was a wonderful experience too. I worked with the early on program in Livingston County. So kids from 0 to 3, and I would see them in their homes and do small groups and stuff at the preschool. And that was also a wonderful experience. So lots of and now being on the outpatient side, I work still a lot with the early on therapists, because a lot of our kids will come for outpatient therapies and early on. So we do a lot of working together, which is nice.
Yeah, I think that's so, that perspective is so great to have both of those areas of kind of working with school systems and understanding that program, and then working in the outpatient. So as we approach this, I just thought that was like a good thing to mention, that you come from that really, good understanding of the kind of that school-based early intervention side, and then that outpatient medical based as well. So which is really great as we start this conversation. Great. So I don't know, did you want to share slides, or do we want to just go off of?
I'm happy to share slides. I have some stuff started. And you said questions kind of will come in.
Yes.
You just shout them out at me?
Yes. Yeah. So typically I will monitor the chat for any questions, and then we'll infuse them in as we go, or we can also look at, how they might go in the end as well. So I'll be moderating that.
Yeah, feel free to shout them out whenever. I mean, if anybody has any questions right off the bat, I can go for that. And otherwise I can just kind of start talking to some of those points that we were trying to hit on. So
perfect. And I know we have actually my friend Molly, who I think her daughter has seen you in clinic, who says,
hi, Molly.
Friends. So you might have some familiar faces from our community who may also you have seen before. So.
Great. Awesome.
Fun times.
Okay, so let me share my screen. Oh, it says the host disabled it.
Oh, let's see here. Try it again.
Same thing.
Oh, more? No.
Still.
There's always something. Let's see.
And I can talk without even like having this up too. That's fine.
Let's see. Where can I ask? I wonder if I can go hover. Can I ask you to share your screen? I can make you a co-host, and then I think that can, let's see if that works.
Oh, yep, that looks like it did.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yay, there we go.
Okay, so you guys can see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so first I was going to talk a little bit about like what teletherapy is. I'm not sure if you guys have participated in any teletherapy sessions or not, but I did a lot of them towards the beginning of the pandemic. So like March, April, May, was doing pretty much exclusively teletherapy. And honestly, I had some serious doubts about it. It was like, really, like, how are we going to get anything accomplished with teletherapy? But I found, and my coworkers found, that there actually is a lot of value that you can get. Like it's not the same as in clinic visits by any means, but there were some like key populations that we were able to hit, and I think provide some really valuable information for and some things to keep up with for using teletherapy. And now still even ongoing, we're doing teletherapy and in clinic visits now, and sometimes even a hybrid of both. So, teletherapy for us has been typically a video visit between you and your physical therapist. And it's set up a lot like your typical clinic visit. So you have an opportunity to share your concerns, goals, and questions with the PT, which, a lot of our PT sessions, especially early on, it's just a lot of question and answering and advice providing. So that kind of thing can definitely still happen with teletherapy. So, and your PT will ask, about your progress, status changes, ask you or your child to demonstrate different activities over the video. And so, I'll get into later some of the things to help make your video visit, the most successful. But we kind of plan on it being like, kind of like setting up a mock physical therapy session with the therapist kind of coaching you through your video to do the things that you would typically do in your session. So your PT will likely guide you through exercises and use demonstration to perform them. And then there will be likely a lot of home exercises or advice on things to do for your home program in between visits. So, and this can be, I did a lot more teletherapy on a consultative basis because there's a lot of kids like, that like a toddler up through, 2 to 6-year-olds are not going to do that great in a teletherapy session. So a lot of it was on a consultative basis. So it was nice to be able to check in with families that you hadn't seen for a couple of months and just, really see how they're doing, see if you could provide some advice, be that face again for the family and for the child, just to, stay checked in. But not necessarily like, we're going to do your therapy 1 or 2 times a week over the computer, because for a lot of kids that just really isn't going to benefit. There are some that we did find that it benefited. Some of our orthopedic therapists were able to like guide people through their whole little episode of care through teletherapy. And so there's different, we alter it, to fit each family's situation. And so is teletherapy worthwhile? And I think, like I said, yes, it absolutely can be. Things that you would absolutely want to consider: the state of the pandemic and everybody's individual health risk, proximity to the clinic. So that's something that we're seeing even now that we're back open. Some people are driving from quite a distance to come to therapy. So it's nice to have this as an option. So that you're not spending an hour driving to the clinics, an hour at your session, and then an hour driving home. It's a whole 3-hour ordeal when you could check in on your computer, maybe even every other section to kind of make it more conducive to having a therapy life balance. And that's the possibility of a combination of clinic and teletherapy visits, which I think is a really nice option. And like I mentioned, the age of a child, I did find that a lot of the stuff I did with little babies was actually surprisingly doable over teletherapy. And I found it actually was beneficial for me as a therapist to realize, wow, I should probably be coaching my parents more during my in-clinic sessions on like, hey, I'm not going to do the handling this time. Like, why don't you get down on the mat and do this with your baby, and then I'll talk to you. And then, you'll realize some of the things that, as a therapist, I realize some of the things that I do naturally because I've done it thousands of times. And I'm like, oh, go do this when you go home. But actually, just what I said, maybe it isn't that intuitive. So it's nice. It was nice to be able to see how parents actually do some of the handling and be able to, better coach them through it. So in that way, teletherapy can be really nice because you can practice something with your child and be like, well, I'm trying this, and like, look, it does not look like what it's supposed to be. So it's nice. You actually, do get to practice a lot of that hands-on stuff yourself. Another thing to consider is insurance coverage. It seems gradually all the insurance companies have kind of jumped on board with teletherapy, but something always to consider, like, are you going to be charged like a visit charge, or is it going to go towards your visit count? If you get so many per year, do you want to just maybe do some consultative teletherapy to get you through until you're able to go in the clinic and save your visits for, something that might be more productive. And then your family goals and what you're working on, of course, is something to consider, whether or not you'd want to do teletherapy.
Yeah, those are all such good points. I know our community has definitely echoed like so many things as we've all gone through these past few months.
Yeah.
And, we have a comment saying, you wonder how this is going to change treatment models for the future of this combination and this hybrid, really to ease the burden of families. And I know we see that, like, especially with a lot of specialist appointments or, consults for different types of specific therapies. I'm thinking of like a feeding and swallowing clinic out on the East Coast in particular that has done these video consults, but had a really hard time with insurance. Now this kind of opens things wide out to get those second opinions and those different types of consults in general, in addition to the, regular types of therapy that families go through.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, it's been a nice silver lining to all of it. We're just realizing how much more you can do and how, you can reach a lot further with this model.
Well, in insurance, prior to the pandemic, we're, I think, more hesitant to cover it. And now we've seen that. I just think it's such, if there's going to be any sort of lemonade that comes out of a pandemic, it's like finding what, and identifying those outcomes. And hopefully, I'm sure we're going to see some very positive things that come out of this new way of doing things and being creative, which is always exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah. So next, I was going to talk a little bit about, some advice on how to make the most out of teletherapy, since we're all kind of, in this new world here. So just some tips to think about before your first teletherapy visit, or as you're going through them. So this first point is just, it kind of actually goes along with clinic visits too, but think about the best time to schedule your appointment, considering feeding time and nap time, caregiver availability, and sibling needs. I had several visits early in the spring that, everybody like got all the technology in order, everything, finally got everything just right. And then it's like, oh my God, the baby's just like so fussy and we can't do anything. That's going to happen even if you make all your best considerations and all your best plans. Of course, things don't always go the way we expect them to, but something that you can try to consider when you're scheduling your appointment. And then also prior to your appointment, think of any changes since your last visit. I think it's a good advice to write stuff down, write any questions or concerns, updates to your progress, because it's easy to forget those things once you get talking with people. Also be prepared to demonstrate any home exercises and comment on how they are going, because that's probably what your therapist is going to ask you I was talking to that same point, plan for what siblings will be doing during the visit to allow for fewest interruptions. Some of the siblings I had were like great little helpers, or hold the phone for a minute while we do this. So, you know, sometimes it can be a great little addition to the session. It's actually really nice to see sometimes too, you know, like the real home life and like, oh, well, you know, that they really like looking at what they're doing over there. So let's try to position you over here so that we can, you know, use that to our advantage. It's nice to have a place cleared on the floor to work on like floor mat mobility type exercises. Also like favorite toys you can think about, like just whatever's going to keep your child the most engaged, because clearly we're on a computer. It's not as exciting as, you know, the clinic with all the fun everything that you could want. So kind of try to plan to have like the things that motivate your child the most. Any needed preps or equipment or other items needed for exercise. And really just ask your therapist for anything they recommend, because they might be like, oh yeah, I'm glad you asked. Like, can you make sure you bring like a pillow so we can work on this kind of, you know, prepping and positioning type thing. Another piece of advice would be finding a place to put your device that's stable, so that you can see, so we can see what you're doing, but also movable. So, you know, like if you have like some sort of like a little holder to put it, so you can set it down, but then like also move it so that, you know, if we need like a different, you will likely be moving in the session, you or your child will be moving. So, you know, movable, so you can get a different angle of view if needed. And if possible, it's great if you have two helpers present, like someone to take the video and somebody to go through the exercises with your child. But the vast majority of time, I realize that is like absolutely not a possibility. But if it is, you know, if you got an extra set of hands laying around, bring them along to the session. So that's kind of like what I had prepared for teletherapy. If anybody has any, you know, questions about that before I go into talking more about home exercises, I can take those.
Sure. I haven't seen anything come in yet, but
Okay.
you know, if there are other questions that come in, we'll definitely address them either now or at the end for sure.
Okay.
But that's so helpful. You know, obviously this is going to continue for some time. We don't know, you know, as we move into cold and flu season, and we were just talking earlier about our own kids and, you know, getting bugs already.
Yeah.
So, you know, having that flexibility to bounce back and forth between an in-clinic versus telehealth for sure is going to be important.
Yeah. And we also, like our clinic has, you know, everybody has their own version of how long you have to wait since you've had symptoms. And so we have now, that's our go-to also, is like, if you're like, okay, well, we have to be, whatever your doctor says, in quarantine for 14 days, but you could still do some teletherapy, you know, it's something that you can fit in, which is a nice option to have, so you're not just having to cancel everything all the time. So, okay, so here we go into home exercises. I'm sure everybody who's had physical therapy has been given home exercises. So here, kids spend way more time outside their PT sessions than in, and they should spend much more time outside their PT sessions than in them. So home program performance should be consistent in order to make gains. So I have a note here that doesn't mean you need to focus all of your days on exercise. I have more on this later. I think it's easy for us, for parents to think like, oh, like I get this advice from the physical therapist and like from every single other doctor and everybody I've talked to, I need to be doing these exercises 24/7, but there's so much more to life, and so much more things that are important. I wanted to express like home exercises. They are a very important part of like, you know, making gains towards your goals. But really, I think the goal is finding a way to fit these into your daily life, not fit your daily life around your exercises. So I think, you know, finding a therapy life balance is very important. Just like a work-life balance is important for adults. So kids and parents can get burnt out on therapy without even knowing it. You know, you kind of just get into the routine. You're like, this is what I have to do every single week. We do this and this and this. And don't even realize that, like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I am tired of this. Yeah, like you might notice, oh my God, my kid is just terrible for their therapist, or just acting out, or just not excited about therapy. And that can happen. We call it therapy burnout. It happens to everybody. So that's why I like, personally, my model of care, I think breaks of therapy can be really great to get recharged, focus on other important things, and then come back with new goals and drive. So you know, you're always working towards something specific that is important to the child and important to the family. So I like to use this therapy bursts model. So it's where therapists and families work together towards specific goals and then take a break while completing their home exercises. And then families return for reassessment, updates to goals, and adjustments to the therapy program.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot in our closed forums too, about, I mean, it comes up all the time, and especially, you know, that early 0 to 3 time frame where, you know, so many of your families are, you know, told that these are like the golden years of development and things like that. So I'm sure you remember, you know, when we talked when Max was little, and just like, you know, you're trying to chase down like every single moment to try to make gains and help your child to succeed. And, you know, like it's, you know, meet it in this window. And it's so great to hear, you know, and so important for families to hear, especially from therapists, about how important taking breaks are. And I remember by 18 months, we were fried. Max was fried, we were fried, and it was like, this is ridiculous. This is just not working for us right now. And no one, I think you were the first person that said, why don't you take a break?
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah. We can do that. You know, it was so.
Yeah, I think sometimes people feel like they're doing something wrong if they're like taking a break. But, you know, and when you're taking a break, you're never like completely cut off from anything, you know, but it's nice to take enough of a break to just let yourself focus on other things, figure out how some of these therapy things are actually like, oh, like in my life, I can just do this. It doesn't have to be something so very specific and something so focused all the time, you know. So I think that's an important point, especially like you said with those 0 to 3, because it's an important window, but an important window doesn't mean that you have to spend every waking moment doing therapy exercises. It's an important time to get educated and do some of these things, but yes, breaks are very important for it as well. And, you know, really a big part of our job as PTs is to empower families with the tools and information they need to complete exercises and functional activities at home. So a lot of times I'll tell families, like, you know, we're your coaches, and the ultimate goal is for them to take what they've gained from our sessions and translate it into a manageable home program. So, and my advice is don't be afraid to ask questions, ask for guided practice and feedback during sessions. So if you're, you know, you look at a therapy session, you're like, oh my God, I could never do any of this kind of stuff at home. Like, we need to keep coming to therapy forever and ever and ever. You know, you can really just pointedly ask your therapist, like, do you have some ideas for me on how we could translate something like this and to like somehow get the benefit of this at home? Is a good question to ask. And like that guided practice and feedback, that's something that I think even more so during this teletherapy phase, I've learned, like, let the parent get in there and practice things with their kid. Because it's not like voodoo magic with our hands or anything. It is stuff that we can translate. But how can we possibly fit exercises into our crazy schedules? So sometimes the schedules are crazy because we're doing so very, very much therapy all the time. So during those times when if you're in an intensive therapy program or something, you probably don't really need to be doing much home exercises. But, you know, the vast majority of the other times, you know, it's good to try to figure out how can we fit this stuff into our lives. So I would advise, talk to your PT about your schedule and what's actually doable. And, you know, have a really frank conversation about, like, well, we do this and this on this day and this day. Like, how can we work together to find like, okay, we're going to work on this exercise or these 2 exercises on, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or something like that. I think if you have an actual like solid plan, you're much more likely to follow through with it. Also, ask if some exercises are ready to be retired or share difficulties that you're having with them at home. So sometimes, you end up with this like long list of home exercises and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. But, and therapists might not even realize like, oh, they're still doing that one. Like, you don't need to keep doing that one. So feel free to ask, like, is this one still important? Now we're doing this other thing. Should we focus more on this? A lot of times I'll say like, ask for like, or I will give, especially like if a family is like, oh, we tried to do our home exercises, but we didn't do them again this week. And then you're like, wait, the whole week you didn't do one exercise, but then you're like, I gave them 20 exercises. Of course, that's just not doable. So then they're less likely to do any of them. So I like to talk about like the top 3 or top whatever the family says is feasible for them. What should we focus on? If it's one thing to focus on for the week, and then they can, you can be successful with it, which is great and way better than doing, nothing. And here your PT will appreciate your honesty if they have too many great ideas. So like, we got a lot of great ideas. They're just like, oh, you should do this would be great, and do this and this, and then all of a sudden it's huge and overwhelming and you can't do any of it because it's just not feasible. So there is no harm in telling your physical therapist, like, we got a lot going on. We need like to kind of like pare it down a little bit. And so these are just kind of a list of ideas of how you can fit examples of how you can fit exercises into your daily routine. Because like I said, that's the goal. It's not that you have to spend an hour every day doing this list of exercises from your therapist. So it's another thing you can ask for advice from your therapist. They will probably have some ideas for you. But here are some examples of like fitting exercise into your daily routine. So it would be like sitting with your legs stretched out while reading your bedtime story to stretch out your hamstrings. So if that's part of your day, you read books at bedtime, and then you put your child to bed and you're like, oh God, we didn't do their stretches again. You could try to think of like, well, maybe if we just kind of gradually work on stretching out legs while we're reading a book, that could kind of sneak it in there. Practicing rolling over at diaper changes, if you kind of just have it in your routine, like every time we change the diaper, we're going to roll you over, we're going to roll you back, and then it's like, oh, we got 2 reps in every like five times a day because we change the diaper 5 times a day. Or things like challenging core strength when carrying from one room to the next by just holding your child a different way. Standing on one foot while brushing teeth, that could be some kids' exercise. Another idea is like bringing your walker to other appointments to walk down the hallway. That kind of thing I feel like comes into play like in the winter months. And if gait training and using a walker is part of someone's home program, it's not easy to do in your house. Like if you don't have room, like it's not this, it feels not the same as like in the therapy clinic where you have all this space. And now the days of mall walking is kind of, out. So, things like, okay, well, if we allow 5 extra minutes, 10 extra minutes when we go to our next appointment, I'll have them walk into the appointment. Try that. Doing sit to stands, tall kneeling, squats, tummy time, whatever it is, whatever your exercise is, during ad breaks when you're watching something. Or practicing reaching with your weaker hand whenever you're handing them like their milk cup at dinner. So, I mean, the list could go on and on and on and on, but those are the kinds of things that I feel like are most sustainable and beneficial because it's, during functional activities.
Yeah, that's really, really great advice of trying to, we talk about play with a purpose, and it's like, how can you find those ways? And I remember, I suppose you could try to do it now during COVID time, but we would bring Max to Target on like Friday nights with his walker and gait trainer.
Yeah, yeah, it's perfect.
And just like wander around Target for an hour because there wasn't a lot of people, or there weren't a lot of people there on a Friday or Saturday early evening.
And how exciting to look down the aisles and like it's it's fun for them.
Way more fun than other times.
Yeah. So, and, finding ways to be more consistent with exercise. I have this question, how can we be more consistent with exercises? So one way is to find ways to keep yourself and your child accountable. So ask your therapist for a list of the exercises with possibly pictures and instructions. Try a reward chart. It could work for the parents too. A reward, hey, if I do my exercises, I can, whatever it is that you want to reward yourself with, or the kids. A lot of times I find that works really well for, that elementary age kid, the reward chart. And I'll have them more often be like, oh yeah, I reminded my mom that we had to do our exercises, and it was like whatever time, and we like checked them off. So that's a nice way. It keeps everybody kind of excited about accomplishing their exercises, and gives some little external motivation too. You can also set calendar reminders, and that works for parents and kids, like, okay, it's this time, we're supposed to be doing this at this time. So just kind of reminders about fitting it in. And then I have this question, any ideas for increasing engagement and excitement with all of this therapy and all these exercises that we do? So my advice is just to keep things exciting and mix it up. There's traditional therapy is great, and I mean, that's what I do every single day, and this obviously has so much benefit, but I encourage like the breaks from therapy, and then also alternatives or additions to traditional therapy. So things like adaptive gymnastics, aquatic therapy, therapeutic horseback riding, adaptive yoga, martial arts therapy, dance. All those things are great alternatives that you can do in between your bursts of therapy to keep things exciting, keep everybody active. So those are just some ideas there.
Awesome.
And then any other questions?
Great. Thank you. That was so much amazing information. And I know these are all ideas that answer questions that I know especially our newer families have often. So yeah, anyone that is tuning in, feel free to drop any questions into the chat. I haven't seen any come through. I've seen a couple of like waves and things like that of people that are joining us, which is exciting. But yeah, we're here for questions too. So if you are joining us later in this, we covered kind of some telehealth and teletherapy portion of addressing that in the beginning, and have been going through those home program questions and tips in the second half of the presentation. So you can always go back and review what we talked through in the first half if you missed that. I love this idea of top 3 exercises. It's easy to fall into the all or nothing. Yes.
Yes, it is very easy to fall into that, and I can appreciate that for sure.
Yeah, I remember we don't do as many home programs now that Max is 8, but I remember those early days, especially we would get in Max's OT, I loved her. She would give us 15 things, and it just was not, it's so overwhelming. Yeah. And then she's like, tell me that, and let's find ways, like you said, to integrate these things into your day so it's not so overwhelming. And it's just like a different mindset shift, because you're just not used to, thinking in a certain way to make it all possible.
Yes, and because there are so many things that you can do, and so many things that therapists can give you ideas, and not that a single one of them is bad, but just finding top 3 is a great way to do it.
Yeah, and again, I think having that. A lot of it also always comes down to communication and building relationships, and just like you said, being honest and saying, this isn't working for us at home. Like this, my child is resistant to this. Is there another way we can look at doing it? And just talking through that has been so important too. Awesome. Well, I don't see any questions coming in, but Everyone, if you are watching this either the first time through or the second time, whether live or afterwards, we can always take these questions back to Sara to come back to answer. So feel free to use this moving forward as well, as a resource. And Sara, I want to thank you for taking the time tonight and presenting on this. This is so important for our families, and I just really appreciate your involvement on the Medical Advisory Board and bringing your expertise to our HIE families. You're amazing.
It is my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.